Morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to what is the second of, listen to this, 27 speakers, all part of the wonderful Global Speakers Inc. showcase. This morning, what we are going to do is be speaking to a young lady who has got a very, very unique message, and that is to be heard. So at this point in the morning, I'm going to give you an opportunity during the course of the morning to be heard as well. So I would like to say, ladies and gentlemen, have all of your antenna up, have your receptors open, and be open to a wonderful talk and the ability to interact with us this morning as well. It is, like I said, the second of 27 incredible speakers from all around the globe. We have 16 weeks, 4 different continents, every Wednesday and Thursday. And if you do want to get the details in terms of real specifics as far as the after event content is concerned, if you want to try and book some of those speakers, if you'd like to find out more about Speakers Inc. themselves, all you need to do is go to speakersinc.com, and they most certainly will also give you the opportunity to then follow the lead that they will give you via the host page. And like I said, follow all of the brilliant stuff happening this morning, and questions and interaction. Those things are very important. The chat group is open, so if you'd like to be part of that this morning, you need to just really ask as many questions as you want to, because Zoya, who is going to be starting her speech in just about, when I say speech, that's not really right, her talk in about 2 minutes, well, that is going to be the conduit for you then to ask the questions, find out more about the lovely young lady, and of course, if you'd like to book her, like I said, this is the place to do that. My name is Dwayne Rockwell. It is most certainly a huge privilege to be here this morning, to be part of this series, and to be representing Duncan and Bronwyn in this incredible venture. It is going to be an epic adventure, and I can guarantee you today and going ahead, you are going to find the speaker that is absolutely perfect for your event or your particular situation. So without any further ado, what I would like to do is introduce to you today's speaker. As I said, her name is Zoya. It's Zoya Mabuto-Mokoditoa. She is the founding director of Zoya Speaks, a training business with a focus on leadership development and public speaking, as you're about to find out. She describes herself as a corporate dropout after unsuccessfully trying to climb up the proverbial corporate ladder. The decision to leave corporate in 2014 and start Zoya Speaks in 2015 has opened her up to living her purpose, to build a world where all our voices are heard, our contributions valued, and where our leadership can create a fundamentally better world. It sounds like such a wonderful place to be, and I'm sure Zoya is going to show us the way. She is very passionate about people and assists individuals and teams as they navigate the distance between their current and future state, as they develop the gung-ho to lead in ever-increasing complexity. Her speaking experience spans a decade, and others have described her as an enigmatic speaker with a strong stage presence. Once again, we're about to find out exactly that, able to hold any audience captive. Today, she aims to share thought-provoking content from the Zoya Speaks flagship program, and that is called Be Heard. At the end of this talk, her hope is that you can walk away with practical tools to help you uncover your voice, share your story, and be heard. So now we are going to listen to Zoya, and as you do, please, as I said, if you've got any questions, type them in, give them to us afterwards, because now, ladies and gentlemen, I need you to help me to welcome our second speaker in the series of Speakers Inc. Global Speakers Series Roadshow, Zoya Mabuto-Mokoditoa. Welcome and good morning.
Hello and welcome to Be Heard. My name is Zoya Mabuto-Mokoditoa, founder of Zoya Speaks, where our mission is to assist you to discover your voice and to tell your story. In the year 2020, we did some extensive research via focus groups, interviews, etc. And in it, we asked you the question, is being heard important to you? You told us that it was. In fact, it was so important that just over 90% of you told us this. And yet, when we asked the follow-on question, but do you feel heard in your personal and professional life? A number of you surfaced that, in fact, you did not feel heard. Our curiosity had us try to answer the question, so what's the problem? And we surfaced a couple of things. Some of you said, I struggle with lack of confidence. Others said, I have debilitating nerves. I just get so nervous. I can't help myself. Some of you said when I stand up in front of a group of people, it's those eyes looking at me, feeling as though people are judging me. Others of you were concerned about whether what you were thinking in your head translated into what you then vocalized or what you shared. Others of you worried that I was going to be misunderstood. Perhaps what I'm saying does not make sense. Others of you said, I think I've got the imposter syndrome, right? The sense that, the audience knows so much and I know so little. The sense that I'm not good enough. Who am I to be standing on this platform addressing people? So these are the different things that came up as reasons for why you don't feel heard. What was interesting is that, a minority expressed that sometimes it's the environment that contributes to this. And for me, this was very interesting. What I want to do today, though, is to take you through, a few ideas around how you can be heard, focusing on yourself and audiences in particular. You'll appreciate that I can only touch on a few of the many elements that make up this body of work. And so as we continue, I think for me, what's important is to start off by really building the case for being heard. Why does it matter to be heard? And so I say, first and foremost, I think the reality is that we are living in a world where influence has become key. I think our ability to influence and to persuade others is going to be the differentiator, not just for today, but certainly for our future success as well. If we're looking at, the styles of leadership, I think we've seen that there really has been an erosion of the traditional styles of command and control. And in fact, those whom we are listening to are not always those with the titles. When you do the research on this concept of influencing and influences, we realize that people are listening, or we are listening to people who reach out and connect with us. We're listening to those who speak directly to our needs, and those who certainly inspire us. I also say that, it's important to be heard because there is direct correlation between people who speak up and those who don't. And in fact, often those who speak up are perceived as leaders. Dirk Decker, who wrote the book, You've Got to Be Believed to Be Heard, shares that when people have confidence in someone as a communicator, they actually have confidence in that person, period. And the inverse also applies. So when people don't have confidence in someone as a communicator, they don't have confidence in that person, period. And I think what this tells us, therefore, is that the ability to communicate effectively is essential to leadership. It is crucial to the ability to motivate, to inspire, to engage, to energize, to galvanize, and to mobilize, an individual or even a community and even, the whole nation. And so let's dive straight into ways in which you can be heard, really starting on you, the person who is presenting. And so I say here, it starts with you, and maybe just to keep, get us going, let's watch this short clip from one of my favorite movies of all time.
Let the challenge begin. Stand up. Let the challenge begin. Stand up. Where is your God now? No powers, no claws, no special. Charles Tuto, just a boy, not fit to lead. Show him who you are! I am Prince T'Challa, son of King T'Chaka! You can do this, T'Challa!
And I think we'll end it there. But really, this is actually one of my favorite scenes from the movie The Black Panther. And it is the first fight scene of the entire movie. And of course, it's the fight scene between Prince T'Challa and M'Baku. Now, in Wakanda, they have what is called ritual combat. And what this means is that any other tribe in Wakanda could effectively put forth a warrior to challenge T'Challa, who was set to become the king after his father had passed on. Now, if that warrior won, they would then become the new king or queen and the new Black Panther. So only one tribe, in this instance, the Jabari tribe, put somebody forward. And of course, this was M'Baku. So, I mean, we watch this fight unfold. M'Baku seems overly confident. And of course, thousands are watching over them. And at some point, M'Baku headbutts T'Challa, and then he puts him in a hold. Like literally takes his, his hand, his arm, and puts it around the neck of T'Challa. And T'Challa is clearly struggling. Then something interesting happens that literally changes the course of events. The camera switches to Queen Ramonda, T'Challa's mother, and we hear her scream the words, "Show him who you are." I love that part. Love it, love it, love it. And those words cause T'Challa really to break free from M'Baku. And then we hear him say the word, "I am Prince T'Challa, son of T'Chaka." In that moment, he remembers his lineage. He remembers that he comes from greatness, that he has a rightful claim to the throne. And this gives him a feeling of power and strength. We know that T'Challa goes on to defeat M'Baku. He becomes king of Wakanda and is declared the new Black Panther. Now, when I teach this Be Heard work, one of the first questions I ask is, who are you? Who are you? And I'm often amused by how many people, will speak of how difficult this question is. When somebody says to you, who are you? You know what comes to mind? It's not an easy question to answer. And yet, the same people will often say to me, it's amazing what can be uncovered just through responding, to these three words, who are you? And so I want to pose the question to you, to say, who are you? Do you know who you are? And in attempting to respond to the question, I want to actually share a couple of ideas with you. The first is that in attempting to respond to the question, what you can do is actually to spend a little bit of quiet time with yourself. So find a quiet space or a place where you can actually just be with yourself. And then, ask yourself the question, who am I? A couple of times. And you may do this as you're sitting quietly. Some people choose to actually use a mirror. So they prefer to look at themselves in the mirror and to engage with that question. And then I want to encourage you to actually record what comes up. One of my favorite speakers, Craig Valentine, actually likes to say, what gets recorded gets rewarded. So record whatever comes up for you and then repeat this a couple of times. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And as you repeat this, something interesting might start to happen where your subconscious mind might actually start to engage with this question on a deeper level. Again, just take note. And if there's anything that comes up, make sure to record that as well. So continue to record this. And then at some point, go back to what you've recorded and start to notice if there are any themes. So any themes that are repeating, that are consistent, coming up about who you are. I remember when I was younger, I used to write a lot of poetry. And in fact, I was going through my poetry some while ago, and I was laughing at how the word warrior was present in almost every poem I wrote, telling of how I saw myself at that point in time. So that's the first thing you want to do. The second is you actually want to engage with others and solicit feedback from them. So get feedback from others, tell them how, they must give you an account of how they experience you. That's the second part. And this is important, feedback from others around how they experience us. I've always found that when we get feedback from others, it really assists us in terms of also getting rid of some of those blind spots. There are things we know about ourselves. There are things we don't know about ourselves, and getting that feedback assists us to reduce some of those blind spots we might have as well. And then I say, finally, what you want to do is actually to consolidate your findings. So you want to end up with a few adjectives or qualities that really capture the essence of who you are. Because the starting point to being heard is about being grounded in who you are. Everything starts with how you perceive yourself. I often engage with people and they'll say things to me like just before they have to present. They'll say things like, yo, I can't do this, etc. Yo, this is so difficult. Oh, I hate speaking. And I'll say to them, mind the story that plays out in your head, because that story often contributes to how you then show up. So this is critically important, that you really get a very clear sense of how do you perceive yourself? How are you perceived by others? And of course, it gives you the opportunity as well to say, maybe there are a couple of things I need to work on as it relates to myself, things I could change or improve as I work on this amazing person that I am. So if you want to be heard, I think it's important for you to have clarity about who you are and certainly, what you bring to the table. I remember when I did this activity, I ended up with, I am fire. I'm a deep thinker and a feeler, and I know my story. I am fire. I'm a deep thinker and a feeler. I know my story. So the next step, in kind of, working on yourself and really being mindful about how being heard connects directly to how you perceive yourself, is to say, how do I then take those three qualities that I'd identified earlier, or those adjectives, and how do I use them, in terms of how I then show up? So what do I mean by this? A couple of years back, I was a young drama student at the university known as Rhodes University in the Eastern Cape here in South Africa, and I was introduced to the work of Peter Brook, and he wrote a book called The Empty Space. Now, in the book, Peter Brook actually describes theater as the process of somebody walking across an empty, or an open space where there is an observer. So there's somebody who's watching as that action takes place. So in applying this concept to the work on the Be Heard program, I asked the question, does it matter how we fill the empty space? Can I, through knowing myself, knowing the value I bring, knowing those strengths that I have, be deliberate about what I bring into an empty space? That really became the question. And so one of the activities I actually love to do in this regard is to, physically ask people to leave the space that they're in. So if you're in a room, I ask you to physically leave the space that you're in, and then to actually observe the space from outside of it. So look into that space, really take it in. And then I ask you to think about those three words, those qualities, that you described to yourself, and to re-enter the space, but this time mindful that you're bringing in a certain kind of energy. You're bringing in those qualities that we've spoken about. And so, I say, if you want to be heard, it starts first and foremost with the internal belief that you're actually somebody who has a certain quality. You're somebody who has a voice. You're somebody who has a life story, and therefore you deserve to be heard. And so one of the most critical things you're going to do as you raise your awareness of yourself is to become intentional about how you move in spaces. I talk about our ability to shift spaces. Often people will say things to me like, Zoya, you've got such presence. And typically people think that presence is this kind of innate quality that a person is born with. And I'm of the view that we can cultivate that leadership presence. We can cultivate that powerful presence simply by being very aware of who we are and what we bring, and then being deliberate to step into spaces, bringing that, carrying that with us. And so a couple of questions for you to consider are, how do spaces shift when you are in them? What do you bring into spaces? What do you leave behind in spaces? And certainly, is there anything that needs to change as you now deliberately cultivate your power presence as a leader? I want to, to talk about the fact that this presence thing is not some innate quality, that either one person has or another person doesn't have. That we can cultivate a presence through learned behaviors that really enable you to command attention when you step into a space. I'm reminded of the figure of Nelson Mandela. and how many people talk about how, apart from his towering kind of figure where he was tall, there was just a presence about him. When he stepped into a room, he didn't even have to say a word. You just felt that he was there. He was grounded in who he was. I'm sure you're also able to think about a couple of people who you know, leaders in your organization, maybe somebody who's in your family who, when they step into a space, has a certain command. There's an aura around them. This is something that all of us can have. And so if we're talking about the behaviors that can contribute to you building your behaviors, I actually want you to become aware of how you carry yourself in spaces. So next time you enter an unfamiliar space, perhaps just take a moment to pause and actually do an audit of, your physicality, your body. How are you carrying yourself into that space? I've put a couple of questions on the slide, and maybe just think through for yourself. How do I engage spaces? So do you look up or down when you enter spaces? Do you make eye contact with the people in the room? Are you the person who goes straight to their seat going, I don't want anyone to notice me? Are you upright or are you crouched? This one makes me think of my grandmother who used to say, walk tall, Mandlovu, walk tall. Mandlovu, of course, is my clan name. So the research actually tells us that it takes 7 seconds to make an impression. Further, it actually takes 0.25 of a second for people to, for us to communicate how trustworthy and how competent we are. So people are constantly reading and scanning for, can I trust this person? Is it safe to be around this person? Can I trust that what they're going to share is valid? Do they come across as competent? And so all of these things are happening in split seconds. And so you need to be mindful and aware all the time of how you carry yourself in and out of both the physical spaces, but the virtual spaces as well. And so when I translate this now to speaking and your role as somebody who takes the platform and speak, I always say that we all have a unique stage proposition. Marketers tell us that USP means unique selling proposition. I call it the unique stage proposition in the Be Heard context. And really we say that this is something that's unique about what you bring to the platform. It's those qualities that make you endearing to your audience, leave them wanting more. And so if you go back to some of those qualities that we discussed earlier, that activity we did where you identified those 3 qualities that really, bring out the essence of who you are, you can actually use those as part of your USP. So remember, I had said that I am fire. And really how I use this is to bring all of my energy, into a space. And I'm typically, after a session, people typically come to me and say, yo, you really energize me. When I am in a session with you, I always leave feeling energized. I leave feeling better than when I came before. This is useful feedback for me and assists me to go, perhaps this is a behavior I need to repeat. It works for my audiences. It's powerful. And it's a huge part of who I am. Now I do it from a place of self-awareness. I know that this is what I'm doing, and I have a sense of the impact it is having. I also said that I'm a deep thinker and a feeler. And this allows me to exercise compassion and empathy when I do my work. And additional to that, as a deep thinker, to think about how I can ask questions that really cause my audiences to think. So one of the other pieces of feedback I get is after a session with you, I kind of go back and I really think because you've asked such pertinent questions. And then, of course, the final one was, I said, I know my story. And if I know my story, then I've got to work hard to ensure that they experience me as somebody who knows their story. So I invest time and energy in really building expertise into my craft. So this is one way of incorporating what's been surfaced about who you are into the experience that you create, not just for yourself, but for those who have the opportunity to interact with you. When you know what you bring, when you know your unique stage proposition, you can use it for the benefit of your audiences. There are a couple of people who I absolutely admire in this respect. I think of Lisa Nichols, an acclaimed, storyteller from the US, speaker and storyteller. And I think she's powerful at storytelling. I always say her unique stage proposition is her ability to tell stories. I think of the figure of ex-president Thabo Mbeki, who I absolutely love because of his speech and the quality of speeches he writes. They're filled with poetic language. And he incorporates a lot of these poetic devices and yet drives very powerful messages home. And so, what are the things that you do naturally that come to you, that are part of who you are, that you can incorporate into how you then present to your audiences? Okay. And so I say, identifying your USP actually takes you from average to next level, because when you know what your audiences most love about you, you can keep giving them more of it. As I wrap up this section, I often say that when people ask me how they can make others see them as a leader, I think of the classic children's story, The Emperor's New Clothes. And, the story is about where there's this vain emperor. And this vain emperor is actually duped into believing that, this person who he has assigned to get him new clothes has gone and bought him clothes that have been woven from the finest fabrics and threads. And of course, at the beginning, the emperor says, but I don't see any clothes. And this person convinces him that, oh, no, here are the clothes. Can't you see them? And of course, there's nothing. It's invisible. But this emperor is duped, because his focus really is on his vanity. And the more he's told, look, this is coming from this exotic place, and it's made of the finest cotton and all of that, he buys into that, unbeknownst, to the fact that he actually is being duped. And so at some point, he actually wears these invisible clothes, and he parades through town wearing these elegant new clothes, unawares that he's actually wearing, nothing, absolutely nothing. And he becomes a bit of a joke. And so sometimes I think being a leader is often misunderstood in the same way, where people mistakenly believe that if they put on airs, they will look like a leader. But I think those airs really conceal nothing. In fact, for me, I think what they do is to draw attention to the very things we might be trying to hide. When we're trying to be something we're not, we end up just as exposed as the emperor did. And so when I think about leadership and some of what we've spoken about around the importance of really getting to an understanding around who you are and what you bring, it's not about pretending to be something you're not. For me, it's the opposite, because the true foundation of leadership is that credibility. It is that authenticity. And to get to that place, we have to invest in finding the answer to the question, who am I? And then using those qualities to become somebody who's respected, somebody who is, admired, somebody who can be influential, and certainly somebody who others want to hear. So the second aspect I want to move to here is, whilst it starts with you, it certainly does not end with you. It actually ends with them. And of course, them refers to our audiences. And I really, often say that the biggest mistake any presenter can make is to think that they are doing this for themselves. When you have this opportunity to present, to speak, to engage with others, often I say that it is an absolute gift when you have the platform, because you can inspire, you can motivate, you can influence. But when you are able to get the attention of your audience, they gift you their attention. It's a gift. And so when we speak, we actually do it for the benefit of those in our audiences. And if we want to be heard by them, we must speak to them. If we want to be heard by them, we must speak to them. So how do we know that we're speaking to our audiences? Well, we speak on areas that are of interest to them. We speak at their level of understanding. We bring in examples that are relevant to them. And of course, in these virtual platforms, it's even better when we can involve or include them. I want to share a quick story around this, an experience I had just before we went into lockdown. Melinda Gates was actually touring the country. She was here in South Africa promoting her book, A Moment of Lift. And there was a big event around it. There was a choir, and she was going to be interviewed by one of our local acclaimed journalists, Reddy Klabi. And so the local choir performed, and the spotlight was then turned to Reddy and Melinda, who were going to be in conversation. So Reddy kickstarted the conversation. She acknowledged us as the audience. She greeted us, and then she welcomed Melinda and promptly handed over to her to take us through her book journey. And of course, this was the moment we'd all been waiting for. And I remember Melinda thanking Reddy for the introduction. And then, as if the audience did not exist, Melinda simply started telling her story. Now, at this stage, you might be asking me the question, but what's the issue here? Well, let me say that on the African continent, in Africa, it is a cardinal sin to not greet. Melinda completely forgot to greet us. And of course, the air was pensive, as if all of us were waiting to be given some kind of acknowledgement, to be seen through the act of greeting. Luckily, already, a consummate professional stepped in and she saved the day, guiding our guest to the importance of this in African customs. Melinda greeted us. We all kind of went, and then we were able to give her our full attention. So I share the story because I think it really emphasizes the importance of being aware of who the audience is, who is in our audience, and what's the best way to build a connection with them from the get-go. Being heard is about ourselves as much as it is about others. And I think when we see and acknowledge others, they seem to reciprocate this. And in the example I used, greeting was one such way. So paying attention to our audiences is a critical thing to do as we explore kind of how we can build connections that ensure that people sit up and really want to engage with what we have to share. So ask yourself a couple of questions. One, who is in the audience? Who's there? How best do they consume information? And what's the best way for me to connect with them to relay the message? The reality is that our audiences come in all shapes and sizes. And whilst we couldn't possibly tend to every individual's needs, I think to get a general sense of who's in the audience is incredibly important. There's a school of thought that says that, when we consider who is in our audiences, it's useful to ensure that we develop content that appeals both to the left and right sides of our brains. And of course, we know that the left side of the brain is more concerned with logic and rationale. It's more concerned kind of with a sense of time and science. It's sequential, it's objective, and consumes information, presented in parts. While when we look at the right side of the brain, we know that it loves to synthesize information. It's more kind of the creative and the artistic faculties, uses imagination, even tends to be subjective and consumes information in whole. So if I said to you, can you think of how, ways in which you might accommodate a left brain thinker? I might offer that, you can give them facts. So give the raw data presented in whatever format, but certainly the statistics, the raw data will connect with somebody who tends to be more of a left brain thinker. And similarly, the right brain thinkers love stories, connect with stories and showcase stories. Other people might say, please, I love to hear Zoya and her wonderful voice. I can stay tuned forever. Other people go, it's not enough. I also want to get that visual aid. And so really think about ways in which you can, accommodate the needs of your audiences so that, you are heard and that your message is able to translate. So I've put here that what you're ultimately wanting to do is to respond to the question, what's in it for me? Our audiences are sitting there asking the question, what's in it for me? Which is equivalent to framing for common ground. And so one way to do this is really by taking into serious account who they are and what their needs are. This, for me, is one of the building blocks of connection with our audiences. After all, there is no presentation without an audience. So I want to start wrapping it up at this point and really to say that for the most part, I think we've said that being heard involves a number of different things that can be done, but the focus today was really on saying the work actually starts with you, but it certainly ends with our audiences. And so I want you to really take some of what we've discussed today, start to apply it and notice any differences that might happen for you. I think fundamentally at the end of it all, what we're saying is that everyone has something of value to contribute. Being heard does matter. And it should, because we all have something of value to contribute. But it does require that we invest time and energy in better knowing who we are and the value that we bring. It does require that we develop appreciation for our audiences and demonstrate this through some of the research we do to better understand who they are, what their interests are, so we're framing for common ground. And so, as I end today, I really wanted to leave you with the following quote. When you live from the depths of your heart, you walk your talk, you heed your conscience, and you don't hesitate to take a stand, your voice rings true and gets heard. This is a quote by Robert Cooper. I hope that the session has been informative, and we really have equipped you with practical tools around how you can continue to develop both your leadership and your communication skills, and certainly be the kind of person who is heard and who makes an impact. Thank you so much.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to jump in immediately and say a very, very big thank you to Zoya. And I think the only thing we can do right now online is the following. Give her a nice big round of applause, because it is that kind of morning. And it most certainly was that kind of talk as well. Zoya, a couple of things before we do anything. I mean, virtually and otherwise, giving you the round of applause that you most certainly do deserve this morning. I feel energized. I feel thoughtful. And you most certainly were heard. And I'm sure very many people online. And I must again just remind everybody online, thank you so much for being with us. That's the first thing. This talk and all of the other talks will be up on the website. And I always know that people love to go back and look again if they do want references on the speakersinc.com site. That's where you'll find all of that